of a young boy who survived a nightmare. Paul Mason was locked in the cupboard under the stairs by his father, who was a police officer. His dad was also a member of a sadistic ring. Come join me right here inside my little murder she shed for this true crime story. Hello, my name is Holly. Before we begin, make sure to smash that like and subscribe button so you can find this nerdy true crime gal again in this big YouTube world. Nerds supporting Nerds supporting nerds are the best kind of friendships. So all nerds unite, or Nords, whatever you are, unite. Also, viewer discretion is strongly advised as this video does contain essay of minors. I will be trying to tell you Paul's story without getting too graphic. But even though I'm going to summarize the things that happened to Paul and his brother, the story is still very disturbing. Paul Mason learned from a young age that his father, Jack, liked to roll the roost. Jack was a policeman, a man who upheld the law, protected the vulnerable, defended the weak, and removed the liberty of those who caused harm to others. He was respected by his peers and regarded as someone who could turn his hand to most anything and do a good job. What they didn't know was that inside the family home, Jack was a monster. He hid the dark side of him well. Paul's mother, Mary, worked part-time in a fruit and vegetable stall in Carlisle Market. Paul had a brother, John, who was 8 years older than him. The family lived in Carlisle, which is a city in England. They lived in a 2-bedroom, 2-story home surrounded by country lanes, fields, and rolling hills. There were cows, sheep, trees, fresh air, and very little else. Paul Mason was told by his father that he was the replacement child, since the oldest child had drowned when the little boy was 3 years old. Jack's mantra, little boys should be seen and not heard, and there would be harsh consequences if the boys didn't abide by that. Jack's mood swings were incredible. One moment he was just fine, but the next he was stomping around the house, swearing and beating his wife and 2 little boys. Paul's earliest memory at about 2 years of age was his mother getting beat by his father. His brother John had tried to step in and was hit in the face so hard that his brother bit his tongue and caused a hole all the way through his tongue. When Paul was 3, he was beaten by his father for going to the neighbor's house. After his dad drug him all the way home, he pulled Paul's pants down and hit him several times on the bottom. Once the punishment was delivered, Paul was then thrown to the floor in order to remain there until he was told he could move. With little or no understanding of what he was doing, Paul saw him pull down his pants. His father pulled down his pants and his underpants and began to stroke his hand up and down his private. It was so wrong that Paul, even at a young age, couldn't understand why he wasn't bothered about his little boy lying there in tears. Paul felt ill, so he closed his eyes and didn't open them for a few moments. Then Jack told Paul to get up and go to bed. On Paul's 3rd birthday, he witnessed something, he didn't understand, but he knew it just felt wrong. His father gave him a little ball for his birthday and told him to go outside to play with it. After playing outside for a little bit, he realized that, he had to go to the bathroom really bad. He walked upstairs to the bathroom and saw his brother and his father both naked. His father was forcing his brother to perform due to all the things Paul had witnessed. He became incontinent. Jack told him if he didn't quit urinating on everything, that he would sew up the end of his privates, which just caused Paul to urinate more out of fear. His father then picked him up, carried him to the bathroom, pulled off Paul's pants, and stuffed them into Paul's mouth. He then threw Paul into ice cold water in the bathtub and kept holding him down. This caused Paul to hit his head on the tub and go unconscious. While Paul was in bed recovering from that large goosebump on his head, his brother John brought him a Batman comic book. Batman became his hero and the only form of good in this little boy's world. His brother John began making cardboard Batman mask that he would carefully tie to his little brother's head, completely hiding Paul's face from the outside world. To complete the image, a tea towel would be wrapped around Paul's neck. John knew this was something that would make his little brother happy, even through the worst days. So John would play the villain and let his little brother be Batman, and they would go into fight mode in a different world. Jack loved to tell the boys scary stories to frighten them. He told one story about a tree that was in their yard and how dozens of bodies of children had been found buried around that tree. Jack said it marked the place where evil lived, and the entrance to hell could be found close by, and it was where naughty little children came to die. He grabbed Paul by the arm and pulled him towards the cupboard under the stairs. As they neared the cupboard, his dad stopped, bit down, and whispered to Paul, "If you listen carefully, you can hear the screaming cries of those children dying in pain. They are in here, in this cupboard." He raised his finger to his lip and told Paul to shush as he listened intently to whatever it was that was in the cupboard under the stairs. "This is the entrance to hell," he said. He claimed that there was a hole at the very back, immediately under the bottom stair. This, he stated, was the entrance to hell. Jack told that story because he had already had an evil plan for that cupboard, and he even added a sliding bolt to the outside of the cupboard door for when he decided to use this dark hole under the stairs for punishment. Just a few weeks later, Paul was sitting in the living room alone when Jack entered the room and told Paul to strip naked. Jack began yelling to Paul that he shouldn't exist and that he was just the replacement child. Paul innocently asked his father, "If you didn't want me, then why did you get me?" Jack opened his pants, stuck out his private, and said, "You came out of here like you were pissed out." Without warning, he grabbed hold of Paul's head with both of his hands and pulled his face toward him. This was Paul's first time to be forced to perform. After this, his dad began hitting him all over with a metal ruler and threw him to the cupboard and locked it. He heard the sound of a TV turned on loudly in the background as he began to scream, "Let me out." It was dark and cold in the cupboard. His vision was impaired by blood, tears, and above all, darkness. Paul was shaking with fear and sobbing uncontrollably. Then he heard a scratching noise and a guttural groaning sound that seemed to come from the very back of the cupboard. These sounds were actually his father trying to scare him, which Paul would learn later. But Paul thought it was the devil rising from hell and coming to get him, so he kept quiet and remained motionless. His heart was beating rapidly, and he could hear it thumping in his chest. Paul sat still as he could for what seemed like an eternity. He was terrified by everything in this dark and pitch black hellhole, but unable to get out. His mom always seemed to disappear during times like these. He knew it was because she was afraid of the monster, too. After summer was over and John went back to school, Paul was stuck at home with his father more often. Whereas John was getting essayed more often by his father, the tables began to turn. Paul was now his victim mostly. Paul, who was still 4 years old, was taken to his father's bedroom where Jack had laid a sheet on his bed to clean up any mess. Paul was then penetrated with his father's hand for the first time. The essay by Jack in his bedroom continued every week for little Paul. Paul turned 5 and started school, which actually was a relief to him because he would be away from his evil father more. His father worked night shifts at the police department and was home during the day. So to be at school part of the day was a blessing to Paul. One day when Paul came home from school, there was naughty magazines placed on his bed by his father, which at first he thought was Batman comics that his brother had given him. Opening one, he saw naked women were inside. His father came in, forced him to look at them, and then digitally penetrated him afterwards, and then pleasured himself. The night before Christmas, Paul went to bed early, excited for Christmas to come. He pulled the covers completely over his head and was just about to fall asleep when he heard his brother. He sounded scared, and Paul heard him say, "Dad, no, please don't. I don't want you to do this to me. Dad, please, no, it really hurts." Paul heard a slap, and John cried out in pain. Jack told him to shut up or he'd wake his brother up with his crying. His dad didn't know he was awake, and he looked over at them to see his dad raping his brother. He was so confused because his dad had never completed the act with him yet. He knew what he saw, felt sick, and after his dad left the room, he lay quietly crying. Paul could hear his brother crying too. The time in the cupboard for Paul came more often. He was left inside for days sometimes. His mom would sometimes sneak him out for a meal. The discomfort of sitting in a distorted position caused cramp throughout Paul's body. After a couple hours, it would become difficult to sit tight and not move. His mother begged for Jack to let Paul out of the cupboard, but Jack said the only way he would get Paul out is if she left the house and took John with her, because he was going to take little Paul upstairs. You know, his mother knew what was going on. She had to have known what was going on. And sickening that she did. She left the house. Me, it would have been better to stay in the cupboard than to put up with what Paul is fixing to go through. So they left, and when the cupboard door opened, Jack was standing in his underwear. "Out now," he said. Paul tried to blurt out his apology, but before he could say a word, he was slapped across the face, a blow that knocked the little boy from his feet. "Stand up," Jack said. "You're not a baby anymore. You're a child, a naughty little boy. Get up them stairs and wait by your bed." This would be the first time Paul was raped by his father. He realized what had happened to his brother that night had now happened to him. He started crying, felt sick, and wished he was dead. When Paul was sick, Jack took him to a train club. There were lots of model trains and children in the room. One by one, children were taken into a back room filled with adults, both male and female. This club was a false front for a pedal ring where children were passed around to all the adults. The room was full of teachers, lawyers, police, and higher-up professionals taking advantage of these little children. What happened inside these rooms to these children? There was like stalls set up, and they were passed from one man or woman to the other. And they each got 10 minutes with a child for the next child was passed along. I'm not going to go into detail because what was said about this is so disturbing that I can't even talk about this on YouTube. Paul's brother began staying away from home long periods of times as he got older, leaving Paul to face hell all alone. Paul cut his hair off as a cry for attention and stuck rocks up his nose, hoping this would make him stop breathing, as he felt he could no longer endure the horrors he was put through. He just wanted to die at that point. His mother took him to the doctor the next day to have the rocks removed, and Paul confessed to the doctor what was happening to him at home. The doctor called Paul a liar and told him how wrong it was to make such things up. So bizarre he didn't believe it. He said Jack was a policeman and would do no such thing, certainly not to his own children. Paul's mother took him home and told Jack precisely what he had said to the doctor. Naturally, Paul was beaten and locked in the cupboard as punishment. When he was removed from there, Jack Paul and told him that no one would ever believe him and that bad boys get treated like this until they do as they are told by their parents. This made him believe that he could not trust adults. It was during this time that Jack was also selling Paul to other men for some quick cash. Men would pick Paul up and take him to their homes for a couple of hours. When Paul turned 12, he would no longer fit in the cupboard. By this time, Jack also quit essaying Paul because he had hit puberty, and Jack just was no longer attracted to him. He still continued to pimp Paul out when he could for extra cash, though. It was around this age he also stood up to Jack for the first time. One day, Paul came home to Jack beating his mom. He was filled with rage all of a sudden and began to attack his father. But his father grabbed him by the neck and slammed him against the wall. Paul yelled, "Put me down right now or I swear I will kill you." "What are you going to do, Jack? Punch me? Kick me? Batter me? Sell me to your pervy friends?" "No, you are not. You can't hurt me anymore, Jack. No one can. It's over. You will never hurt me again. None of you will. And if I can prevent it, you'll not hurt Mom or John again either. Jack took a step backwards and released his grip. Paul saw in his face the realization that he had pushed so far that Paul could be capable of anything. Paul desperately wanted to kill him, and the thought of getting a knife from the kitchen and plunging it into his heart crossed his mind. And I can't blame him. Paul had set his mind that his father would never abuse him again. Paul left the house in his teens and wandered through life until he actually decided to become a police officer, which was very shocking to me. He decided there was no better way to expose and break down corruption and get to the sexual deviants than to become a part of the system he so mistrusts. Paul had 2 children with his first wife, but never could remain committed in a relationship because of his lack of trust. Although Paul was a good father and was actually the sole provider of his 2 children, he never actually was able to form a relationship with a woman for very long. He just jumped from one woman to another. He said he was not gay. He just couldn't figure out how to trust someone. Just something that for most of his life, he never could. And I can imagine the pain he'd been through, how he would have trust issues. His brother John died from bone cancer in his early 40s. Paul retired as a policeman and had never told his past to anyone until it physically started affecting him. And then he started to see a counselor who told him to report his past to the police. Because of Jack's age and health, the historical basis of the case, and the fact that so many abusers had died, the CPS did not proceed with charges against Jack. Paul's mom passed away first before Jack. Before she passed, she called Paul and apologized for what she had allowed Jack to do to him. She was still married to Jack, though, and had never left him out of fear. Jack passed away a couple of years after his wife. Paul Mason wrote a book after he retired from the police force called The Cupboard Under the Stairs, A Boy Trapped in Hell. My story today was based off of that book. You can buy it on Kindle if you would like. Very disturbing book. Like I said, I did not go into details like that was in that book. So if it was hard for you to handle what I told you today, then you definitely cannot handle that book. I want to tell people stories. Just some days it's so hard to tell stories of children that have died or children that have survived. Either way, it's heartbreaking. And to an extent, I can see some of their pain. No, I was not abused like Paul. Not at all. I did go through some SA from a neighbor when I was a little girl. So in a way, I can feel how he could have blocked that out for so many years before he finally seek counseling about it. You don't want to think about it. You just want to block it out. You want to not dwell on those things. And sometimes that can mess you up physically. Like me, I got on drugs because I tried to block that out for so many years. And then I got in trouble because of drugs. And then they forced me to seek counseling afterwards, after I went to jail. And so then I was finally able to get the break I needed. And now I'm going on almost 10 years clean. Anyway, guys, I love y'all so much. And I thank you for supporting my channel. Come back again to see me in the murder she shed. Maybe I'll walk around for a minute and let you see all my beautiful flowers. Simon knows I'm saying bye. Here he comes. He's like, Mama's saying bye. I'm going to say bye. And Max, you still stink. You smell like, I don't know what he's rolled in, but he needs a bath severely. Simon, my husband said it was my dog that stunk. It's his dog that stinks, not my dog. My dog smells like roses always. He smells like a bottle of roses. You don't roll in that nasty stuff, do ya? Maxie rolls in that nasty stuff. Anyway, and I'm not petting you, Max. I know I'm being mean, but you need a bath.